Welcome to BONA Dialogues.
In a world that's always racing forward, sometimes we need to slow down and reconnect.
Connect genuinely, broaden your perspective, and share your passion.
Bonafide Dialogues, where authenticity, creativity, and passion merge. Jim Dukhovny is an American entrepreneur and innovator, best known as the co-founder and CEO of Alef Aeronautics, a company dedicated to developing electric flying cars. He co-founded Alef Aeronautics alongside Dr. Konstantin Kisley, Pavel Markin, and Oleg Petrov, technical experts who share his dedication to turning a sci-fi vision into reality.
Let's go Back to the Future. Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies, and seeing flying cars in 2015, right? It shows future as 2015, and now we're in 2025 and we still don't have cars flying around our cities. Why is that? Why does it take so long for us to be in that future that looked so exciting for all of us?
Well, so one of the first actually mentions of the flying cars was even back in 1905, I think, by Jules Verne's. So flying cars were not only back in history before 2015 and Back to the Future. I also loved Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite movies. That being said, the notion of flying cars in the book science fiction and the film science fiction were for a long time. There were multiple attempts at that, actually many attempts on that. Henry Ford tried to do that. The flying cars, many smart people, Mueller tried to do that. So many smart people tried to do that throughout the history. The fact that we succeeded does not mean that we're smarter than them. It just means that enough technologies matured actually around 2015, as you mentioned. The car in Back to the Future traveled to 2015. We started the company in 2015 by complete coincidence. But the year 2015 represents maturing of number of key technologies like battery technology, like software drone technology, like rapid prototyping, like 3D printing, like composite materials, and advances in many other technologies made it possible right now what was impossible before, because from the laws of physics and aeronautics, that's actually pretty complex problem, which requires multiple industries and multiple technologies to work together to make it a solution. Technically, we already do have flying cars. You saw probably video of our car flying. We don't have them in the cities, which is completely separate topic of conversation, which is customer adoption and legal and regulations.
Right.
That's the only reason why we don't have them yet.
I looked at some other companies all over the world that try to solve the same problem, and most of the cars look like small helicopters. They don't really look like a car.
So flying car, which looks like a helicopter, is a helicopter. Yes, you're referring in the class of the aircraft which called eVTOL, electrical vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, which are called flying taxis. That being said, early on when that technology started to that industry started to mature, all the CEOs of the actual companies clearly made sure this is eVTOL. This is a new kind of helicopter and aircraft technology. Nobody called them flying cars. That being said, there are some irresponsible CEOs right now of those companies who started also calling them flying cars, as the media did.
Yeah, that's what I've
Um,
been seeing everywhere. Yeah, they refer to them as
yes,
the car, but
which again is tells us about the state of media in 2025 where we are right now. It just let's change the term and everything. So anything which looks like a helicopter, operates like a helicopter, business-wise, legal-wise, um, aeronautic-wise, is a complete helicopter, is an electric helicopter. A car has a very simple definition. It's a regular car which drives on a road, has four wheels, right? Can park, do everything, and so on. So flying car is actually a very simple definition, and you'll be surprised that nobody in history have ever done it before us. It's a regular car which has a vertical takeoff. Those two things were never achieved in history. The reason I paused, untethered with a practical usage and so on. So there were attempts before, but they were tethered, they were not successful flight tests and so on. So there were attempts before that, right? But having a regular car, which can do everything which your car can, vertically take off and fly, that has never been done in history. And again, unfortunately, media calls all air taxis. By the way, air taxi is a business model. Taxi is not the type of the car, right?
exactly.
Taxi is the business model of how you operate. So air taxis slash eVTOLs, which are electric helicopters, there's a lot of them, but they have nothing to do with being flying cars.
And in addition to that, your car is electric, right?
The car is electric, not in addition to that, but because of that. Turns out to be when we initially tried to look at different energy sources for the car, Um, electric propulsion, electric DEP propulsion fitted perfectly for that particular use case. This is why eVTOLs, flying taxis, drones, and everybody else in a similar kind of propulsion system uses electric propulsion. It gives you a lot of advantages. A, it's distributed, which means it provides redundancy, which means there are eight, in our case, independent propeller, speed controller, motor systems, battery systems, right? So it provides redundancy. It's easier to manage. It's lighter, simpler, distributed again. So for that particular solution, for that new type of, it's called AAM, Advanced Air Mobility, electric propulsion is by far the best fit. That being said, hydrogen is close second. There are also hybrid combinations of electric gasoline, electric hybrid, and other
Option.
types of propulsion. So it is, we choose electric because at least in 2015, it was actually a perfect fit and the best fit.
Interesting. And I really like your design. It looks futuristic. Could you please talk a little bit about the design of your car?
If you're talking about exterior design, how
Exterior,
it
yeah,
actually look like,
exterior, yeah.
that's actually not futuristic. That's the opposite of that. So initially, the first several versions, full-size versions, which flew, did look actually futuristic, and this is something I did not like. I wanted to look like a regular car. So we actually hired a famous car designer from Sweden, and he used to work on Bugatti, on Lotus, on different cars before. So my main goal was to ask him to make it close to the regular car,
But it's
to make
still,
sure
it
it
looks
looks
kind
more
of
familiar.
modern and it's sleek. That's what I meant when I said it looks futuristic.
Right. It's rather than futuristic, I would say it looks more like a sports car.
Hmm.
And that's also kind of was intention because he actually had a pretty complex problem which we threw at him, and we worked together. Obviously, it was partially ours, partially his design. Um, this car is symmetric. The car is symmetric because of the way it flies, and most cars which you see on the road are non-symmetric.
Hmm.
So visually, I can't even recall a popular symmetric car. Like I don't think there is one. Cars are naturally asymmetric. So to make a symmetric car, which is again something unusual, but to make sure it looks usual to people, we try to went to the sports way. Also, keep in mind we have this mesh on top, right? So the mesh serves two purposes. It actually serves three purposes. One is it calls a structure. Two, it allows the air through. It's not solid like in your regular car. It allows air to come through. And third, it also has a safety device also, right?
Mm.
That mesh needed to have a shape. It turns out to be the shape of the sports car, again, is the best optimal shape for that. So the design is not simply because we want it to look cool. There's actually a purpose behind it.
Interesting. And you mentioned safety. It seems like safety is the biggest concern that people may have when it comes to flying cars. I remember watching an interview with Elon Musk many, many years ago, and him expressing his opinion about flying cars. So, two things he mentioned, that one, it's noise, and second, that they may fall. So, how would you address that?
Well, yes. So safety for us is not even number one. It's number zero because customer adoption, legal regulation requirements for us, the whole business model is completely 100% depends on safety. Safety is what makes or breaks the whole industry. So safety is at the core of everything. So even when you had previously questions on mechanical, how it operates and everything went down to safety. Why electric propulsion and anything like that, right? Everything comes down to safety for us. Safety is actually measurable.
Hmm.
Safety is not just a word, like a philosophical word. FAA defines safety as probability of something of critical and non-critical failure with for some different kind of classification, something like, for example, 1 in a billion critical failure and like 1 in 10 million non-critical failures, right?
Right. And there's no
Now,
100% safe car out there on the road.
there's no 100% almost anything of transport,
Exactly.
comes to transportation. But we actually, by design, this vehicle is at least 4 to 16 times safer than any traditional aircraft already by design.
Hmm.
And we're adding more and more features to that, right? So there's more and more safety features, which is already at least 4 to 16 times safer. So if you ever flew in any kind of airplane, commercial Boeing, commercial Airbus, or anything like that, this is at least 4 to 16 times safer measurably, not
Interesting.
theoretically, but you can actually measure the safety of this. To your other points of like, for example, noise, because it's of electric propulsion, because of the closed design where all the propulsion is actually inside, and several other advances, this is actually safer than sorry, this is actually less loud. This is actually quieter than, for example, loud motorcycles.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's good.
one of the differences, like motorcycles always make that noise, but here you have that noise during the takeoff, like about 3 seconds. And even during those 3 seconds, it's already quieter than a motorcycle. Now, when it is up in the air, right now, when you see helicopters fly, like airplanes, already when you have small airplanes fly, like Cessna, you don't hear them, right?
No.
This is many, many times quieter than those small airplanes. Many times quieter, which means once it gains the altitude, the amount of decibels which you hear is actually zero.
That's great. And going back to safety, it seems like you need to be looking at safety from two different perspectives, right? Like you mentioned, as a flying object and as a driving vehicle.
Well,
Like
so
double standards, right?
in
Level.
general, just when we talk about the flying cars, the easy way kind of looking at it is when the tires touch the ground, that is exactly the same as any other car.
Okay.
All the safety features, all the rules and regulations, all the driver licenses, everything applies as a regular car when you touch the ground. As soon as your tires are not touching the ground anymore, they're in the air, all the rules of regulations and the safety features of the aircraft applies. Which also means, as you correctly point out, that two different types of certification in the air and on the ground. Different safety rules, different certification, everything like that. So yes, in this sense, yes, it kind of doubles. But on the ground, it's just regular EV cars, pretty similar to Tesla, kind of like how you work it.
Yeah, and one or two people can drive your car, right? Or fly your car.
1.5.
One and a half.
So usually that's we have a unique challenge where we already the size of the car is the maximum size which can fit into parking space or the driving lane, right? There is actually the physical size where it needs
Yeah.
to fit. Because of and in order for us to have a good kind of energy usage, we need to have propellers radius as big as possible, which means it's a balance between the radius of the propellers and the size of the cabin.
Yeah.
So the cabin size, hence, is kind of limited by that balance, right? Now, the way we made the cabin is that it is potential for two people to occupy that or one person, depending on the size of the person.
Weight, right?
Not the weight,
Not weight, the
size,
size.
the size.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because it's a size limitation, not the weight limitation.
I see. Weight limitation probably too, no?
No,
You don't want.
there's no weight limitation.
Yeah.
With any aircraft, if you increase the weight of the cargo, you will decrease the distance, but by very small amount.
Interesting.
So it's a size, not the weight, which matters the
Interesting.
most. We've been flying ultralight version is a little bit newer, but we've been flight testing the full size for about 3 years, maybe. Obviously, have to be a pilot.
Did you
And
personally
we've
fly?
been doing well. Actually, no, hold on. So the different versions we've been flying for 5 years, not even 3 years. That being said, the latest version is what is called ultralight version. So there's like rules and regulations about ultralight versions, which again we have to follow. What we had to do for this specific US ultralight version, because ultralight means different in different countries, is reduce the weight and at the same time increase the strength, which is again very not trivial thing to do, which we actually successfully did. We also, for the ultralight version, had to remove some batteries, like reduce the amount of batteries there, which decreases the range, but it allowed us to fall into the ultralight categories. And yes, we've been doing it for 3 years at least.
Interesting. Is your goal to grow your company? I don't know if you can answer this question, but I will ask you, is your goal to grow your company or maybe be acquired by some other company? For example, if Tesla decides to acquire you and then grow it faster with all the resources they have? I'm just curious.
I don't think Tesla is one of the companies which is going to look this way. They are not. I mean, we talk to, let's say, Tesla people at high levels, and I don't think Tesla is looking this way at all. But
Mhm.
the goal is to have the successful product. There are different ways of exit, right? One is you can have an IPO, you can make a company public. You can be acquired. There's like secondaries ways. There are many other ways of having an exit. I don't think it matters. We're not creating a company for some specific exit. The goal is to have a successful product. The goal is actually to creating a new transportation category. The goal is to take a huge chunk of automotive market. The goal is to replace your Tesla, Toyota, Ford, or whatever you drive, because that can do the same thing, and in addition, it can fly. So the goal is actually to change how the world moves around you. And again, theoretically, in the long term, definitely not in the short or mid term, we can potentially move the whole world almost twice as fast. So that means you going to work and coming back to work. That means moving goods. That means moving emergency response vehicles. That's moving like everybody,
That's
right?
such a good point.
Right. So when you move almost all the world faster, not only you giving back time to people, that also affects prices of goods. That affects saving lives again in the case of emergency response. So moving people much faster has like a huge implications, and that's probably one of the main goals.
Yeah, and you have a Golden Gate Bridge behind you. There's so much traffic there, right? Right. That's one of the um, problems that you could possibly solve with your product.
Right. So usually the way I explain things maybe start with a problem. What causes the traffic on Golden Gate Bridge? What is the number one reason why there is a traffic on Golden Gate Bridge?
Because everybody needs to commute at the same time. Too many people go to San Francisco for work from the Bay Area.
Well, let's say if everybody needs to commute at the same time from Bay Area to Bay Area, from San Francisco to San Francisco, in the air there will be no traffic whatsoever. So why there is a traffic on Golden Gate Bridge but not in the air?
But not in the air,
Yes.
because there's no flying cars.
No. So the only thing which causes traffic is the width of the road. If you have a limited fixed width, and through that width you're trying to put more and more cars, that's what causes the traffic. It's a fixed width of the road. That's what causes the traffic, right?
Some
So
people
every
say
year
we keep adding lanes, but we still have traffic. So I
um
heard from professionals saying that adding another lane wouldn't really solve it.
so adding another lane would not solve it for many reasons. One is it takes billions of dollars and many years to add another lane. That's number one. So it's not scalable. By the time you do that, you have so many more cars that that lane already like provides very little relief.
Mhm.
In
Especially
most
with a bridge,
cases,
right? You're not gonna add another lane.
correct. In most cases, there's actually no more room to add another lane. Try to add another lane on Market Street in San Francisco. Try to add another lane on the Golden Gate Bridge behind you, right? So in most cases, there is actually no more room to add any more lanes at all. Even if you do, it takes so long and so expensive to add another lane. It provides little relief because in that time you actually increase the amount of cars by the coefficient, which is more than the lane will actually provide the relief.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So the width of the road is your problem. And the only way, so this is exactly why self-driving cars, Hyperloop,
Yeah.
connected cars, so all of those new kind of ways of transportation cannot solve the traffic problem. You still have the width of the road.
Right.
Doesn't matter how much you're going to optimize the traffic. There are many, many ways of optimizing the traffic, but uh, as long as you have the width of the road and you put more and more cars every year, you still have a fundamental problem.
Yeah.
The
And
only way to do it is open them.
tunnels may be one of those solutions, but again, it's one by one, right? Cars go through the
Tunnels actually make the
tunnels.
problem even worse, right? So again, think about the tunnel. Tunnel has even more fixed width, right? Tunnels, the reason Hyperloop didn't work in the beginning, and it was doomed, it cost something like a 35 million per mile to build. And that 35 million per mile can put like one car at a time through.
Yeah.
So that's probably was the worst solution for traffic you can possibly imagine. It's a good solution for other use cases, but not for traffic relief.
Yeah.
Your width of the road is the main problem for traffic. As when you eliminate the width of the road, which is again in the air, this is how you solve the problem.
Well, there are going to be some limitations in the air too, right?
So the reason in the air you have like next 200 or 1000 years until you're gonna get any kind of traffic there. So first of all, you don't have crossroads because different directions cross each other in
Yeah.
Y direction. That's
Yeah.
number one. Number two, to expand the lane to the right or to the left um, takes pretty much one command from Central Station or something like that. It takes almost $0. That's number two.
Just wait for
Now,
our regulators to step in and start telling you where you can fly, where you can't fly.
they already did. We already have highways in the sky. There's already passes in the sky. So it's already there. And number three, you can always expand in Y direction too, right? You're not only expanding in the X direction, you're also expanding in the Y direction. So it's much more scalable solution. And when I say much more, it's like at least 1,000 times more scalable solution. Hence, this is why in the next 200, 1,000 years, we're not going to have traffic in the air.
That will be wonderful, but you're saying it's going to take a very long time, right?
It will. It will take a long time, which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. The
Why
good
is
thing
that?
is because the adoption of new technology, it needs to be incremental. Again, because of safety, because of two things. Because of the actual safety and because of the perception of safety.
Mm,
Those two things are different. So to most of the customers, if you ask them if they want flying cars flying above your head and above your house, they will say no.
yeah,
And this is again perception of safety, right?
yes.
Because mathematically, practically from the noise level, it is better than what they have today. So incrementally, that will actually show people that the benefit of this is more than other nuances, right? Um, Having all those people stuck in the freeway on El Camino on Market Street, wherever, right? Um, and having right now, I mean, right now there's like some kind of an aircraft flying above your head like all the times, right? It kind of would be similar. It kind of will be like nuances, but again, there's a perception of safety and there's also actual safety. So doesn't matter how much we can design it and the regulators can make sure it integrates into the existing air and ground regulations. There still will be practical edge cases, which will be solved once certain number of vehicles will be deployed.
Yeah,
So this is why incremental approach. First there's going to be maybe like one or two above your cities, and you're not even going to notice them. Like they're going to integrate same as Cessna, helicopter, anything like that. Then there's going to be little more, and little more. The the advantage of incremental approach is that at each step you can make an easy adjustments. If you make small
right.
steps, you can make easy adjustments at every step. So this way it would be best for the customers and for everybody else. Think about of this analogy, which I usually always do because it's a very close analogy. Think about when people went from horses to cars,
Yeah.
right? And we can learn. It wasn't done, it was also done in kind of too rapid, probably at that point of time. This is kind of similar change as people went from horses to cars. And we can learn a lot from that change and how to make that adoption and how people at first, when cars came to life, like people were scared of cars. People won't go back to the horses, and the majority of the customers had perception that horse is much safer than a car.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, most of the people, well, I don't know, if they still think the horse is safer than a car. But the idea is we can learn from that, and this is kind of like a similar change. So incremental, slow change is actually good for everybody.
Yeah. And now we see this slow adoptions from regular cars to self-driving cars, right?
Right, this is a little bit different. There is also a
Still
big change.
scary, right? If we talk about how people
Right. So the good similarity
think
between
about it.
self-driving cars and I was about to say self-flying cars. There's actually also true, correct term. But flying cars
Is
is
that one of your goals, by the way?
it's already self-flying. It's just there's no regulation which allows self-flying with a human inside. Um, but the similarity is in, again, perception of safety. If you know the history of Waymo, which used to be part of Google before, Cruise and somebody else, they had biggest issue they had initially was not the safety, but the perception of safety, which they actually made some of the moves to actually solve it, right?
Oh,
And it's
interesting.
still their biggest problem, the perception of safety from general public than the actual safety. They are mathematically, and you can actually now we can do have the data. They are safer than average regular driver. Actually,
Right.
safer than most of the drivers, right? If you ever
But we
rode.
have this difficult time trusting technology.
Correct,
Just
correct,
seeing car driving without a driver scares you.
correct.
How do
So
we
this is
shift
again
that
perception of safety.
yeah.
Yes,
So
that's
we
a
have to
perception of
shift
safety.
that perspective. And like you said, it takes time. One car will drive, everybody will be looking up and thinking, oh my God, I hope it doesn't fall, right? And they'll
Right.
start
It
reading a
is a
sign.
right. It is perception of safety. Moreover, think about this. At some point of time, again, hopefully not in the beginning, but there will be accidents. It's normal, right?
Yeah,
Most accidents in the air are caused by human error by far. Same as on the ground, by the way, right? So there will be accidents, but one of our goals is to also take another step further and to make safety enhanced even in the case of human error fault. For example, we're working on a full vehicle parachute, right?
that's
Which
great.
we have advantages. So in the air, you have advantage of longer recovery time. The time to recover is longer because on the ground, once you hit something, you hit the curb, you hit the tree, you have like something
Things happen
secondary,
too fast.
there's a
Yeah,
very small time. In the air, there's a longer recovery time, and parachute is one of the advantages of longer recovery time, in addition to other systems that step in, right?
yeah, it sounds very promising. The bad thing is, when you see new technology and something goes wrong, all attention is on it. You would have thousands of accidents on the road and people don't even pay attention to it. But if something happens there, oh, it's not safe. Again, it's how people see and react to things.
So one of my usual examples, favorite examples, is a story of actually Henry Ford when he first, you know, that Henry Ford actually started aviation too. There was Ford Aviation for a long time. So Ford built an airplane. His know-how was to build an airplane with specific different material, which he thought would be stronger than other materials. But that made the aircraft, if I remember correctly, heavier. And people were doubted, nobody like cared about it. So to prove them wrong, he actually wanted to have a publicity stunt and make an airplane fly across United States. And so that airplane flew, and then he got the call that airplane actually had an accident and it crashed. It crashed somewhere in some farmland, broke some kind of like a farmhouse, went through a whole bunch of farm animals, and finally crashed at the house of the farmer.
Oh, goodness.
So Henry Ford thought, and he said, like, journalists are all over the place. And he said, this is it. This is the end of the aviation. Well, then he learned that the pilot survived, the farmer, everybody. So the only casualty was they killed the chicken. Moreover, that airplane took a couple of hours to fix, and then it continued flying all over United States. That crashed single-handedly, made Ford Aviation at the forefront of the aviation. Because not every crash is a bad crash. Sometimes crash actually proves how safe and reliable your vehicle is, which
That's a great
was the
point.
case with Henry Ford's aviation, which
And you
hopefully would
learn,
be the
and you
same case
learn
with us.
something, right? You learn something every time there is a problem. You improve.
Not only that, you design by design. So the reason that happened to Henry Ford airplanes because of the new type of material he was using. So it wasn't just by accident that that happened, right? Same thing with us. We are by design making sure that it can withstand any kind of critical failure.
Safety by design, yes, that's what everyone needs to hear.
Right,
You're
because again,
thinking about
safety is
design.
measurable. Safety is not, there's a perception of safety, which is different conversation, right? But the actual safety is measurable. And you can actually design it to be several times safer than anything today.
No, that's great. And you said that it's going to take long time for us to see many flying cars in the air. How long do you think it would take? How close we are to that future?
I'm not even going to predict. There's so many variables here from, again, we work with today's legislation. So on a small scale, we can deploy many of them in today's existing regulation, right? So we don't need any new regulation. But if there's going to be like a million of them, you would probably need new regulations, right?
Here in the US, right?
Everywhere,
Everywhere.
everywhere.
I know
So
we're usually very strict here in the US. Maybe in other countries that can be
depends on huge
achieved
amount of factors.
faster.
Just last 2 weeks, there was like two huge advances from US government to signed by top US government, one signed by president, another signed by Secretary of Transportation for actually advanced of eVTOLs, flying taxis, and so on. So the government is pushing it, probably reaction to Chinese government pushing that industry. They're actually pushing it much further than US does. So there is a kind of a race in that industry because obviously everybody sees it's a very promising industry. It's projected by Morgan Stanley to be a $9 trillion industry by 2035.
How interesting. And China is already
2050, sorry, 2050, by 2050, $9 trillion industry. So it is kind of getting into that competition because at this point everybody got it that yes, it's definitely going to be here. It's potentially going to be bigger than the whole aviation or automotive market. So it's a huge new industry and you want to be kind of at the forefront of that. Otherwise, it's a really big price to pay if you're falling behind.
yeah. And now, if somebody wants to buy your car, how much would that cost? It's probably very, very expensive, right?
The word expensive is kind of very subjective, right? So
Of course, yeah.
any kind of cars, any kind of actually more technological products, the pricing works the same way. In the beginning, when you produce just a few of them, it's going to be very expensive.
Right.
Moreover, especially if you make them by hand, that makes it even more expensive.
Absolutely.
As you increase the volume and as you make it more automatic, right? As you
Yeah,
do the factory optimization and so on, you get the reduction of the price.
right.
Now,
Last time I
as of
heard you talking about it, it was 300,000. Is it still the same?
correct. So right now you can go on Alef.aero website, Alef.aero, and you can place a refundable deposit and order on the car for the final price of which is $300,000.
That's wonderful.
Now,
It's exciting.
right. This is because it takes the cost to produce one car for us is kind of close to that.
It's exciting that somebody can actually order a car. Of course, it's 300,000. Not too many people can afford it.
Well, you can actually, the deposit costs for, there are 1,500, there's actually $150 line. So there are different lines and we can put like a very small deposits too.
And you have many
You're,
people that already
yeah,
did
yeah. So
that,
you're
right?
at this point, you are placing your place in line. You're putting deposit on the place in line. Again, refundable deposit on your place in line. You're not actually buying the car yet. You're putting your place in line, right? Um, But as in the future, the price is going to be eventually, long, long, long time from now. Think about this. The car is fundamentally simpler than Ford Focus, Toyota Corolla, any kind of those cars, which means eventually getting to kind of the same volume and everything else being equal, it should actually cost less than your Ford Focus, Toyota Corolla, or anything else. Again, some people misinterpret when I say where can I put a deposit on a $30,000 car? You cannot. Eventually, someday, and so on. Right now, moreover, we're going down the
Wishful
list. So
thinking. Yeah.
yeah, the advantage of people they call early adopters, right? They're paying premium to get first hands on new technology and making sure they have like enough time to use it. That happened to many that kept to Tesla, to iPhones, to many things else, right? So early adopters are getting their hands on this earlier than everybody else. They are paying premium for that. But this is kind of balances out, and it's not because for us we're making a huge like kind of margin. This is what we do. On the other hand, the EV tolls, the flying taxis, cost at least $1 million to $5 million.
Oh.
So we're way below that. Way below that. That's kind of how it works.
And infrastructure for those flying taxis is another huge expense, right? Because they
Right.
go
So they
from
will
point one to
always be
point,
expensive.
yeah.
They will always be expensive because the price of the infrastructure will be passed to the consumer. So they're fundamentally expensive.
Yeah,
Hence, will always be cheaper.
interesting. But there's a lot of progress in that area as well. It seems like we're trying to solve traffic issues, but it's a hard problem to solve.
Right. So the EV tolls and flying taxis are not going to solve the traffic issue for exactly the reason you just said. They require infrastructure. So for you to go from your house to work using the flying taxi, you will need to go from your house to the vertiport, from vertiport to the vertiport, from vertiport to your work. In many cases, you're faster walking.
Yeah, yeah. You're not saving much time.
Right. So you need to see practical, again, rather like many people talking about in terms of theoretical notions like safety, faster, so on. Everything can be, most things can be measured with the actual hard numbers. So the easy exercise, which I usually show to people, open Google Maps, where you are on your origin, the destination where you want to go, find the closest vertiport and map that.
Yeah. Sounds the same concept when people take BART. You know, you have to drive to the BART station, you take the train, then you have to get from the BART station again to your workspace. Yeah.
Something, yeah, but the BART is probably better. The problem with vertiports is that BART already has an infrastructure. Vertiports need to be built.
Yeah.
Building, there's no way you're gonna put 10,000 or 100,000 vertiports in San Francisco in
Right.
the next 100 years.
Right. Interesting.
Right. When you think about all of these new types of transportation, think about something very practical and the easy exercise. Imagine you going from your particular house to your particular place of work, not something theoretical. And then open Google Maps and map that.
It's very important what you're doing, and you have been working on this project for 8 years now, right?
10.
10 years. And so much progress made, and you're so close to actually producing cars, right? Do you still need to raise funds for the next
Yes,
stage?
right. So the good news is compared to eVTOLs, flying taxis, and all of that, we'll literally raise fraction of theirs. Like when I say fraction, it's not even 100 times less than they are, but it's like 1,000 times less than they are. The other news is yes, any kind of startup to move forward, not any kind of, but especially hardware and early startups like ours, does require funds, much smaller amounts, like literally like very small amounts. But it does require funds to kind of move forward to get to the first deliveries and so on. We're literally several zeros less than almost everybody else there. But yeah, we do require funds. We constantly fundraising. We try not to fundraise more than we need. Another good news about what we do is we can actually be profitable in just several years after starting deliveries and setting it up, which means we will not need to raise any more after only a few years, like literally like maybe like 2 to 3 years, right? So yes, as of right now, we are raising very small batches of funds, very small, just in order to make that necessary progress for the next step, until we will be profitable and we will not need to raise anymore.
Yeah, but you will need to build a factory, right?
No, no,
No?
no. Building a factory, it's one of the approaches. We take a much simpler approach of just utilizing existing factories with shared revenue, which makes it much simpler, faster, easier. Just utilizing existing factories, customizing it for specifically our production. Considering the what we do, considering that it's pretty close to automotive and aviation, considering the price point, that appears to be the best of both worlds, kind of in a short term at least, utilize existing, just modifying existing factories to start producing and not creating your own factory from scratch.
Yeah, it's wonderful how you approach it from the business perspective, you know, trying to be efficient.
Right. I mean, we have to. I mean, this is what kind of like the startup mentality versus kind of what Boeing, Airbus, and everybody else are trying to do. And this is very practical. This is called, you probably heard the term like a lean startup, right? The agile methodology and so on. We use a lot of what was in a software methodology. We use, because actually all four founders have software background, we use it in hardware, right? Making it a lean startup, doing things agile. So that actually helps. That makes a world easier, much easier, and much quicker, cheaper, fail safe, fail fast. getting to the actual market, getting to first customers, and getting to being
I
profitable.
know many of my listeners, our bona fide dialogues community, work in the legal tech community, and I think it would be interesting for all of us to hear if there are any serious challenges. What would you want to see happening in terms of regulations to help you to get to that place where you can sell many cars and make it accessible to more people?
So you're right. The regulation map is actually complex. It's just more than certifying vehicles. It has to do with training. It has to do with licensing. It has to do with insurance. There's like many aspects to that. The good news, there's two good news. Well, there are multiple good news in here. One is whatever we do fits into absolutely existing regulations with zero changes, specifically what we do.
That's good.
The good news for you is there's like literally green field of new laws and regulations which can be created specifically for flying cars. Because we fit into the car regulations and aircraft regulations, but we're totally different beast.
Exactly.
So there is a potential for doing something very specific to us. Now, in eVTOL, AAM, flying car industries, we actually want that. We want specific regulation. We want something stable in writing so we know kind of like what to go for and
What
so
the
on.
requirements are.
We actually want that. The other good news, just last week, US, Canada, UK, several other countries met at Paris aviation show. So the heads of the Secretary of Transportation, head of FAA, and from Canada, UK, and several other countries, and then signed a document making sure it's going to be uniform across countries,
That's great.
which is also important in here. So yes, there is a potential for huge amount of specific new regulations specifically for our industry. We're really actually waiting and hoping for that, and there are a whole bunch of lobbies which are actually pushing for that. US government regulations, as you know, by design are slow and complex. That's what they're supposed to be. So this again is maybe a good thing with an incremental approach, right? We'll use whatever existing right now. We have more than enough business for the next 5 years with existing ones. While that happens, wheels are turning. Wheels are turning, and as you know, market competition is a good thing for everybody. So the competition is good. Hence, the legal and regulations is also moving on all fronts here. So hence you want to keep an eye on this. Things are actually moving faster than I expected, way faster than I expected right now. But yes, you want to keep an eye on that because I can give you an example. Sometimes, especially in the summer, we have interns. They coming in, they literally intern for like, I don't know, 3 months, and they come out and get six-figure salaries right out of college. The reason for it is because there is really scarcity of engineers in our particular field. Nobody's teaching that. I mean, they're starting whatever, but there's just not enough knowledge in the world to teach that. Same can potentially happen in the legal field. It is a new field which doesn't matter what happens, is already going to be there. Even if it doesn't come to 9 trillion, it will come to at least $4 trillion market. And there will be I can tell you my problem right now. I cannot find an attorney who is a specialist in both aviation and automotive law.
Yeah.
And those professionals will be in really high demand. Think about AI experts in the beginning of AI boom, in the beginning, right? Think about LLM experts, like large language models experts in the beginning of AI boom, right? Same thing will happen, or already actually happening with our industry. There's really scarcity of talent on all levels in legal, mechanical, aeronautics, in like all legals. Hence, those professionals are actually getting pretty good salaries, and they're guaranteed to have being employed for a long time.
That's good, and I think it's another good advice for younger people. This narrow specialization that many people pursue is not going to work in the modern world. It's good to work on this intersection of different industries.
It's not so much. It is intersection, but the more important point is like what is called like a greenfield or a new industry, right? So whenever think about when software came out, think about where smartphones came out, think about when AI came out, right?
Yeah.
When you have a fundamentally new industry coming up and and the market size is big, right? So the potential market size is big.
Yeah.
Total addressable market is huge, right? So when that happens, that's a place to actually go into that industry, like early.
Yeah,
When you have a
that's good
greenfield,
advice.
when you have like a huge, this is the place to go there.
Right, that's very good
I
advice.
mean, we
But
get people who are obviously nobody worked at flying cars before, right? And it's like in a startup environment, they just get thrown into that. So we just show them and they learn. They learn pretty quickly. I mean, you face the problems which nobody faced before you, which is actually cool.
it is
And
very exciting. I can only
yeah,
imagine this young people like just thinking they probably wake up every morning, I'm gonna be working on a flying car. That's
right. And
amazing, you know?
that's not that again, this is mechanical, software, legal, like
Yeah,
anybody, right? And you quickly learn, like you could be legal in I don't know, the patent law. You can be legal in something else. That doesn't matter because once you're gonna get thrown into that, you will have to learn a lot. You'll have to research a lot. It's new. It doesn't matter what your background was before. This is new.
yeah.
So you will have to adapt pretty quickly.
Interesting. So when you're not building flying cars, what do you like to do in your life
When
outside
I'm
of
not building
work?
flying cars, well, I'm actually not building flying cars. My co-founders do.
I
Again,
know,
by
but
the way, to
generally
point
speaking.
to make an important point, there are four co-founders. So Konstantin, Oleg, and Paul are the people who actually created and built the flying car, not me. I'm the person with a crazy idea who just drew something on a napkin. They're actually who engineered the whole thing. They actually came up with how it's supposed to work and so on. So that's actually a big point that I'm not building the car. I'm doing non-technical work, which is also important, but the credit
Very
actually goes
important.
to my
Yes.
co-founders.
Yeah,
And
it's actually something that I wanted to ask you about, how you came up with this idea, why, who inspired you, and how all this happened. You just
there are
mentioned things
different,
happening on the
right.
writing or drawing something on the napkin.
There are different places to start this. I start with my father, like Leonid, who was a famous singer-songwriter. At the same time, he was an engineer, inventor. His patents were used in spaceships, for example. He also loved science fiction. So I got in my DNA, and by growing up, the intersection of creative engineering and science fiction. And then kind of the natural product for all three was the flying car. I did for 5 years worked in South San Francisco while I lived in Palo Alto. So I had to commute all the time here. So traffic was the obvious problem which we wanted to
I
solve.
experienced
Uh,
it for a decade. Same thing, commuting to San Francisco
right. So
every
it was
day.
this obvious problem. I used to do the lectures on science fiction in Stanford, on Stanford campus, on campus of Stanford universities. And one of the lectures idea of the flying car came up. So, but because my background is in software engineering and in business, I actually called out to Konstantin, who is my friend and PhD in material sciences, and he can build anything with his hands. and asked him. Then I called out to Paul, who I knew was a drone expert, and he was the best in drones, plus he knew microelectronics. And then in my previous startup, I worked with Oleg, and turns out to be Oleg he's the most experienced and has unique experience of designing a helicopter and a car. So I actually asked three of them, drew the crazy idea and said how practical it is to build this a prototype, which they said they can build it in 6 months. That was 10 years ago. We're still building it. Right. So we hugely underestimated the complexity of the problem. That being said, if we knew how complex it was, maybe we would not even start that in the beginning.
But it is a very complex problem.
It's complex everywhere. Physics, legal, business, everything is complex in here. But yeah, so this is like how it went with like small incremental steps from like a small hand-sized model to the bigger model to more functionalities and so on. So yeah, we went 10 years through ups and downs. It's normal for any startup. And yeah, this is how we're kind of like slowly surviving and actually right now very close to that first
Don't
delivery.
say slowly surviving. You're striving and you have this amazing, impressive car which flies.
Yes, but like as a startup, like you would talk to anybody like Tesla before they were big and everything like that. You're
Surviving mode.
always in the startup mode where it is a survival mode until like even after IPO, it's still survival mode, right? So we are in a survival mode. Yes, we are striving in several on number of orders, on what we're able to achieve so far. So we are striving there
And
on
you
the
have some
technical
great
progress.
investors, right? That people who believe in you and in your product.
Yes, we're lucky to have really great investors at this point. We have like 20 investors, big, small, big VCs, family offices, small investors. They're actually great, not only as investors, but also as people. We consider them our friends. Again, we're lucky enough to have specific types of investor, right? Not every kind of investor works. Sometimes it's just somebody like we had literally one person come in with $100,000, which is considered to be a small investment, very small. But turned out to be they brought so much to the table. We just love them. It's like that person, just angel investor, like a very kind of like a small amount angel investor. But that person did so much for the company. That's like we'll take that kind of investor any day, right?
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
when you're not managing your company, what do you like to do outside of work?
That's a good. I used to do a lot of things before. So I used to do events. I used to be a musician, do lectures, doing intellectual events, many, many things. But basically, it's gonna sound weird, but for me, the most relaxing and enjoyable thing is to be on stage.
Interesting.
When
You
I'm on
sing.
stage, I actually feel most natural, and to me, this is kind of the most natural thing to do. So sometimes I do organize things where I'm on stage in kind of in different roles. That's pretty much what I enjoy the most. Like I have like a
And I
really
would
weird
like to
background.
attend one of those events where you sing.
Yeah, I have like a really weird background from being a DJ, playing guitar, like a singer-songwriter, as my father doing lectures at Stanford, working as a software architect at Yahoo, Microsoft, um, writing books, fiction and nonfiction, many, many different things. So I like creative things. I like being on stage. To me, this is relaxing, enjoyable things from which I get kind of like a dopamine. I think that's my thing.
Wonderful. And I usually ask my video podcast guests about kindness, what kindness means to you, and is there a person in your life who touched your heart with kindness that you could share with us?
Sure. The reason I'm pausing because to me, and this is public, I put it on all my social networks. Kindness is the most important virtue, if you want to call it, in the world by far. To me, the kindness is. So to me, kindness is always, like I said, safety is number 0 for our cars. Kindness is number 0 for me. This is kind of fundament of everybody I talk to, what I try to do in the world, what I try to do and everything. So kindness is fundamental because everything else depends on that. Your work, family, love life, entertainment life, like everything depends on kindness. So kindness is at the core. The person, like immediately 2 people come to my mind, and it's kind of going to be very trivial and obvious, but it's my grandmother and my father, both of whom recently passed away. My grandmother like literally risked everything for me. She quit her job to save me from some natural disasters and worse. She raised me. She did so much for me. She was a pediatrician, so she
Very kind
never,
person.
like, money was never on her mind. She always, if she heard there's a sick child everywhere, doesn't matter if it's a midnight or anywhere, she never took money for that. She always went and helped children, and not children too, but she was a pediatrician actually. So her kindness is probably was like there. And my father, obviously, because you can hear it from his songs, you can see his concerts when he's on stage. He just projected kindness. He's like, children always loved him, like everywhere. And he obviously probably did the biggest sacrifice being famous back home. When we came to the United States, he actually sacrificed everything for me. And he came here and started here absolutely from scratch. He had to take like very small jobs and so on. So in my family, I think like this is kind of like my role models. This is how I grew. And to me, my grandmother and my father, they made sure that like in everything I do, and they made it sure by example, right? You can teach anything you want, but if you actually do something different, that's different. I saw that with my hand, how my grandmother did kindness, how my father did kindness to everybody. So this is actually number 0 to me in life and in business, to make sure we bring more kindness to the world on both individual level and the global level. So that's kind of different on individual and global level. I love to do both, like individual to like specific person, and especially like my father did on the global level. That's also important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Thank you.